Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Janet Yung. In this channel, I share about Chinese metaphysics on the topics of Bazi and Feng Shui. I also dwell on entrepreneurship as well as personal growth on the subjects of leadership, motivation, and communication. If you do like the videos that I share on this channel, please do remember to subscribe, like the video, as well as click on the notifications bell to get reminders whenever I upload new videos. In today's episode, I'll be talking about identifying the favorable elements based on whether the chart is a strong or weak chart in the Bazi series. So far in the Bazi series itself, I've covered relationship, emotions, career development, as well as business. So I hope you like the series that I've been sharing, and if you do have comments on what you'd like me to share more, please do indicate in the comment section in this particular video. So without further ado, let's start with today's lesson on how do we identify a chart as to whether is it a strong chart or a weak chart. Similar to all the other episodes, please do remember to go to bazicalculator.janetyong.com to download your Bazi chart or scan the QR code that I'm showing on this particular slide to get your Bazi chart before we begin. So in a Bazi chart itself, how do we determine whether a person is a strong chart or a weak chart? So the first thing we look at is actually the day element or the day master the person is born on. So in this particular example, what we are seeing here is a person born on the day of wood, specifically young wood. Now the image of a young wood is that of a tree, and I'll tell you why I mentioned the image in terms of significance a little later on. The next thing we'll want to look at is basically the month the person is born in. Now in this example, this person is actually born in the month of the rat, which is usually the month of December. And what we will want to look at is the water element that is actually within the rat itself. So just a hint, what does water do to wood? So let's move on to the next slide. If you remember, I actually cover the 5-element interaction in a couple of videos before this. So you can actually click on the link that I'm showing actually at the top here right now, either on the 5-element interaction video, or you can also look at the health video itself where I share more about the 5-element interaction. So just a quick recap. One of the key things is we will usually look at is the productive cycle. So what is the productive cycle? Productive cycle is when water produces wood, when wood produces fire, fire produces earth, earth produces metal, and metal produces water. Then the other way around, it's what we call the exhaustive cycle. Exhaustive cycle is basically the reverse of the productive cycle, where wood exhausts water, fire exhausts wood, earth exhausts fire, metal exhausts earth, and water exhausts metal. Then of course we have the other cycle, which we call the destructive cycle, where you actually have got, for instance, water destroying fire, okay, fire melting metal, which is destroying metal, earth dirtying water or muddying water, which is destroying water, and metal chopping wood, which is metal controlling wood or destroying wood itself. So in Bazi, when we're actually looking at a person, whether they are strong or weak chart, we usually will look at what are the elements that are nourishing the day master. So in the previous example, because the person is born on the day of young wood, which is tree, right? So therefore, to grow the tree, okay, basically we usually need water, okay, and besides water itself, by having more trees, it strengthens the tree. That's the concept. So therefore, if a person is basically born with actually more water, or born in the season of water, or has more water and wood surrounding it, therefore is considered a stronger chart. Now then, If it's the other way around, where they are born in the months where it is not supportive of the wood, like in a metal month, in an earth month, in a fire month, then it's usually considered generally a weaker chart. Now, this is the very basic way of looking at strong and weak. We don't just look at it this way, but for today, just to explain it simply, because I do get a lot of questions about strong and weak charts, what's favorable elements, what's not favorable elements. Therefore, I created this particular video to share and explain a little bit more in the basic and most simple way. Now, in this chart that I showed earlier, this person is born on the day of young wood, the image of a tree. So if it's the image of a tree and born in the month of winter, which is actually the water month, if you remember earlier on when we say a chart is a strong chart, it needs the supportive element of water, which produces it, as well as the wood. So do you think this person is a strong or weak chart? We'll leave that and come back to you a little later. Now, let's take a look at wood born in the various different seasons. Wood born in the various different seasons, whether is it spring, summer, autumn or winter, presents a different picture. Therefore, the kind of elements a person would require would actually be different. So that's how the concept of favorable elements come about, and that's how the concept of balance come about as well. When you look at a strong or weak chart, it's not necessarily good or bad whether a chart is strong or a chart is weak. The concept of 5 elements, whether is it in traditional Chinese medicine or in Bazi, especially when we're talking about relationship and health, is really about balance. If you look at a tree, a big strong tree, you will actually need the metal to chop it to make it into useful furniture. And if you look at a tree, for it to grow well, you also need the sun as well as water. And soil, which is the element of earth, needs to be there too. So when we look at a person's chart, we are always looking at balance, whether there are all the 5 elements within. Is one element too strong? Are they born in which season? So when we look at a chart, besides favorable, unfavorable, weak and strong chart, we also look at the balance and the flow within the chart itself. How do you determine the seasons? So in another video on health, I actually talked about the different animal positions or palaces on the 24 mountains. But let's just cover it here one more time. So if a person is born in the spring months of February, March and April, they are basically born in the months of tiger, rabbit and dragon. So these are the spring months where wood is strong. If they are born in the months of May, June, July, then they are born in the summer months, okay, of snake, horse and goat. What about autumn? Autumn are the animal branches of monkey, rooster and dog. So metal element is strong then. Then if you were to look at the months of actually November, December and January, these are the winter months of the pig, the rat and the ox. So let's revisit the Bazi chart. If this person is actually young wood born in the winter month, December, of the rat, which has the water element, would this person be a strong or weak chart? Correct. So 2 concepts. One, water nourishes wood, so therefore it's a stronger element. So winter also has the element of water, then you also will nourish the wood. Therefore, when we look at a person's chart, if the person is actually born in spring and basically maybe winter, they will generally be a stronger chart. But if they are born in the months of summer and autumn, then they are considered a weaker chart. So when we look at a favorable or unfavorable perspective, if a person is a weak chart, the elements of water and wood would be favorable for this person, right? So that's how we determine whether what are the favorable elements for the chart. Then the other elements of fire, metal and earth is unfavorable in the very basic sense. Now you can look at a tree in winter. It's actually a little bit brittle, so you do need the element of fire. So when we look at strong or weak charts, sometimes we look at the temperature of the chart as well as to see whether it regulates. So if you have a picture in mind, it's a lot easier for you to understand this particular concept. But like I mentioned earlier on, if a person, even if it's strong but only has wood, has totally no fire, totally no metal, then it becomes a little bit off balance. So therefore, when we look at favorable elements and regulating chart, we need to basically look at it in a more holistic sense. In a Bazi chart itself, if a person, for example, in this Bazi chart, is born in winter, it's considered strong in a basic sense. Therefore, the favorable elements, based on the previous example that I show where you have all the 5 elements, is fire, earth, and metal. That will be favorable for this person. Unfavorable element would then be water and wood, because this person is too strong. So that's how you work on a basic sense of favorable, unfavorable elements based on weak and strong charts. Now then, let's look at, for this particular person, if he or she is a strong young wood element. Therefore, when they are actually going through the favorable luck pillars or luck elements of fire, earth, and metal, they are going through favorable element, as I am showing here in the green rectangles. Then when they are going through the unfavorable element period, it is basically the water and the wood elements. Now, when I first started studying Bazi, I was wondering, it's good to know what's favorable and unfavorable. How do we apply it, basically? What I've discovered over more than a decade of practice in this is favorable or unfavorable. When we're actually looking at work, career, business, it's more about the effort that you have to go through. So when you're going through a smoother period, basically maybe things are a little easier for you. For instance, when we're looking at interviews, maybe before you even graduate, you will already get a job. But if you're going through the unfavorable luck period, so usually you're unhappier, or you have to put in a little bit more effort to reach the goal. So from an interview perspective, you may have to send out 50 letters, maybe you only got 2 interviews, and maybe you don't even succeed in the interview. But if you try harder, you will still succeed. And as I've covered in the Bazi for Career Success series itself, during these particular influences, the key thing is actually learning the skill sets that comes along when you're going through the experience itself, when the influences come, whether they are favorable or unfavorable. So maybe your chart already has a lot of the metal element. So when you go through the metal element, and it represents basically a lot of systems and structure, right? Example, for this wood, metal would represent process orientation. Then if the person already has a lot of process within their chart, they may basically be a stickler or very, very strict about protocols, which cause some friction with other people. Therefore, it becomes a little bit unsmooth in their career development journey. But it does not necessarily mean they cannot succeed. It basically requires self-awareness so that we can basically adjust our skill sets, adjust our mindset so that we can do better. When we look at favorable or unfavorable elements, when we recommend industries that they should be going in, it's basically just so that it's easier. Maybe things will be smoother, but it does not mean that if you're in an unfavorable industry that you will not succeed. It just takes more time and may not necessarily maximize your potential. Now, the other thing I would like you to look at is when we're looking at certain elements, for example, like the fire element. This person, fire element in terms of image, is that of the sun. But if the sun is actually born at night, then maybe people cannot really see the sun, and therefore they may not necessarily get the recognition. So what does it mean for them? It generally means maybe they have put in double the amount of effort in order to be recognized, because the sun at night, nobody sees them, right? So that's the key thing about understanding our chart. When we're looking at Bazi, remember I mentioned balance is important, the flow is important. Now, if a person, for instance, in this particular case, is born on the day of young wood with a lot of metal and wood, but not necessarily a lot of the fire elements. Now, fire is the output of the wood element. Even if this person is great and has lots of skill sets, if they are not able to express themselves, which is the output element of fire, they may not necessarily showcase their creativity and talent for other people to recognize. So this is another concept when we're looking at Bazi chart that we need to investigate as well. If you remember, I shared about clashes in terms of health, as well as in another video, a red and horse clash. When we go through luck periods, even when it is smooth, it is favorable element, but if we go through and have clashes in terms of elements, it can mean a lot in terms of our interaction with people and relationships with people, that can create chaos even if we are going through a favorable element period. Therefore, I would like to stress one more time, it is good to know favorable and unfavorable elements, because all of us want to make our life a little easier, right? And especially from a relationship and health perspective, balancing the elements are important. So it's good to understand what's favorable and not favorable. But from a career, business development perspective, it is more crucial to actually focus on our innate talent, our inherent characteristics, what we do well in, and then focus in terms of maximizing our skills. If possible, pick an industry that is actually favorable for you. Otherwise, when we look at Bazi and the study of Bazi, we need to look at it from a more holistic point of view. I hope you have enjoyed what I've shared with you today. And if you do like this series and video, please remember to subscribe to my channel, like the video, share it if you find that other people will benefit from this, as well as click on the notifications bell so that you can receive a reminder whenever I upload new videos. That's all for this particular episode, and I'll see you the next time. Goodbye.